Sir Keir Starmer has launched a high-stakes mission to the Gulf, hoping to secure lucrative trade and defence deals with the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Yet his trip has already sparked outrage as human rights groups demand he confront a grim reality. Saudi Arabia's execution crisis, with 300 executions reported this year, the highest on record. This is Starmer's first visit to the region as Prime Minister, and while Number 10 has emphasised the importance of the UAE and Saudi Arabia as vital modern-day partners, the visit risks overshadowing his leadership with accusations of hypocrisy. As critics point out, Starmer was vocal in denouncing Boris Johnson's 2022 visit to Riyadh shortly after a mass execution. Now in power, Starmer's silence on Saudi Arabia's human rights abuses could backfire. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are massive economic players for Britain. Trade with the Emirates generates £23 billion annually, while Saudi trade adds another £17 billion. These partnerships support over 90,000 British jobs, with thousands of UK businesses exporting goods and services to the Gulf. Additionally, Saudi Arabia is the largest buyer of British defence exports, worth a staggering £3.8 billion annually. Starmer's government sees these relationships as key to Britain's post-Brexit recovery and global influence.
Incoming President Donald Trump recently put out a statement, I think it was on Truth Social or on X. He said, if the hostages are not returned, all hell will break loose. There will be hell to pay. What do you think he means by that? And do you think with his arrival, the situation is likely to get worse for the Palestinian people and the region?
Well, actually, we are in touch with the incoming administration and with the President Trump advisor, and we are trying to coordinate with them our efforts. And all of us, we agree, and we are hoping to get over this situation before the president comes to the office, because we have priorities to stabilize the situation in Gaza. We have priorities in order to restore regional security. And such a statement is expected, and we hope that it will work and it will be delivered to both parties in the same manner, that this situation needs to end.
So he's made it clear in the conversations that you have had with him and his team, he wants this resolved by inauguration.
Yes.
He's made that clear.
We had heard this from his team, at least as I recall the conversations that I had and I engaged with them, that they want this to be resolved now, today even.
So are your teams now working to try and make that happen?
We are trying our best. We've been doing our utmost. As I mentioned to you, I don't want to speak much details. I'm trying to protect this process as much as possible. And I hope it doesn't get leaked, from one party or another. But it's really unfortunate to see all this bloodshed happening and all these risks that's even the hostages being exposed to, and the leaks and all these kind of news on the public domain does not benefit anything but just to score some points, some political points for one party or another.
Saudi ambassador to the UK discusses UK-Saudi relations on Sky News, emphasising their importance to the British economy. Despite the promising economic narrative, human rights organisations like Reprieve are calling Starmer's priorities into question. Dan Dolan, Reprieve's Deputy Executive Director, issued a sharp statement ahead of Starmer's visit saying, Starmer once condemned Boris Johnson for cozying up to Saudi leaders after mass executions. Now he has the opportunity to stand up for human rights, or expose his hypocrisy by turning a blind eye. As Starmer met UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed on Monday to discuss renewable energy partnerships and regional stability, critics were quick to note the glaring absence of any public mention of human rights. Later that day, he flew to Saudi Arabia to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, whose leadership has drawn global condemnation for suppressing dissent and overseeing an unprecedented surge in executions. Starmer's advisers insist he will address human rights in private talks, but skeptics argue these meetings are more likely focused on securing trade and defence contracts. Back home, the controversy over Starmer's trip has been amplified by mounting concerns about Britain's military readiness. Speaking on GB News, a former soldier issued a grim warning. Russia sees itself at war with Britain. They're probing our undersea infrastructure, launching cyber attacks and escalating hostilities. If we fail to rearm and prepare, it's negligence at the highest level. The ex-soldier's warning aligns with criticism of Labour's defence policy. While Starmer has promised to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves admitted that funding increases would come from reallocating existing budgets, potentially at the expense of education, healthcare and policing. Reeves defended Labour's approach, pointing to recent increases in defence spending, including £3 billion in the latest budget and £2.3 billion for Ukraine. However, critics argue this falls far short of addressing the military's long-term needs. The optics of Starmer's visit are under intense scrutiny. Shaking hands with MBS, widely criticised for his human rights record, could undermine Starmer's claims of principled leadership. Public opinion is sharply divided. Labour's left wing has accused Starmer of abandoning the party's core values, with hashtags like Starmer sells out and execution crisis ignored trending on social media. On the other hand, his supporters argue that forging strong economic ties with the Gulf is essential for Britain's stability and global relevance. Adding to the controversy is the broader human rights context in Saudi Arabia. Families of executed individuals have long decried the judicial system for its lack of transparency, alleging that confessions are often obtained under torture and trials are rushed. For many, Starmer's silence on these issues feels like a betrayal of the UK's supposed commitment to human rights. Amnesty International joined Reprieve in urging Starmer to take a firm stand, stating, "Human rights cannot be sidelined for economic gain." The trip also raises questions about Starmer's strategy for managing Britain's global relationships. While the UAE and Saudi Arabia are undeniably important economic partners, their reputations as authoritarian regimes create a moral dilemma. Critics warn that any deals signed during this visit could be overshadowed by the perception that Starmer is willing to prioritise financial interests over human dignity. After concluding his meetings in Saudi Arabia, Starmer will travel to Cyprus for talks with President Nikos Christodoulidis and a visit to British troops stationed there over the Christmas period. While this part of the trip is less contentious, it underscores the strain on Britain's military amid global tensions. Veterans and defence experts have repeatedly warned that the British armed forces are underfunded and ill-equipped to respond to modern threats. Starmer's Gulf tour is shaping up to be a defining moment in his premiership. Every handshake and statement will be scrutinised for what it says about his priorities and principles. Will he confront Saudi Arabia's human rights abuses or focus solely on securing economic and defence deals? For Starmer, the risks are enormous. Failing to address the execution crisis could alienate his progressive supporters and damage Britain's moral standing on the global stage. But pushing too hard on human rights could jeopardise the economic partnerships his government views as crucial for the UK's recovery. The fallout from this trip will likely resonate far beyond the Gulf. With critics at home and abroad watching his every move, Starmer is navigating a diplomatic minefield. His leadership will be judged not only by the deals he secures, but by the message his actions send about Britain's values. If you're eager to see how this explosive story unfolds, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and stay tuned for the latest updates. The stakes are high, the drama is intense, and we're bringing you every twist and turn of this unfolding scandal. Don't miss out.